Welcome again to another Pneuma conversation. A raw, on, I'm messing up my words already, but it's okay. That's what we do here. A raw, authentic, and unfiltered conversation with spiritual leaders, teachers, coaches, healers, and seekers.
Mhm.
Get to know who we truly are beyond the polished world of interviews, social media, and podcasts. We are not perfect, and we struggle too. Join us as we share our lives, our challenges, and meaningful discussions on healing, transformation, and the future of humanity. Today, the gentleman that I'm about to introduce has not only touched my life, but has touched many lives in a deep and a profound way. He has been a father figure, a mentor, and a friend to many. And in this moment, my words fail to even convey the profound impact that he has had on so many lives. And I won't be surprised if I'm not able to get through this conversation without crying, because it means something very special to me. So, with deep admiration, love, and respect, we are in conversation with the man that not only introduced the word pneuma to me, he is the reason that I love the word. Dr. Steve McCormick, welcome. Steve, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks for that invitation and introduction. I do feel especially grateful for the Spirit's tether, who has connected us over the years, and we just seem to come in and out of each other's lives and pick up where we've left off. I thought as you were just now speaking, I've been thinking of late about uh, the way during the season of Advent where we talk about making straight the way of the Lord.
Mm,
And but remembering how our Lord made all the crooked ways straight for us. And I've been thinking, what does it mean to make the way straight again for the coming of the Lord, for the coming of Spirit, for the ways in which we are awakened and can travel on the path
exactly.
to the future. And I've been thinking, what does it mean for us to make straight the path for the coming of God into our lives, but also for the coming of others, known and not yet known.
Mm,
I think the word that comes to mind is the Hebrew word for the nature of God is makom, space. So as we make space on the path, we widen it and it becomes less crooked.
yeah, yes.
Because there are no exclusions. Everyone is brought in, is widened. Similar to
Mhm.
the gate in the New Jerusalem. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger
Yeah.
as the tent keeps expanding. And that's I think that is the way of the Spirit. So my language has been of late, as to quote the late John Lewis, um, we should go out into the world making good trouble. And I think wherever the Spirit is, good trouble is being made uh, because the Spirit is always speaking love into a crooked uh, mess of things we've made and,
Sure.
and widening the path for us all if we'll just be attentive. So,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
I want to I want to warn everyone that you are a professor, you are a teacher. That will always be a part of you. So we may get a lecture in the next hour, and that's okay.
Now you sound like my wife saying, keep it short.
No, not at all. So, so yeah, you were my former church history professor. We met at Eastern Nazarene College, and um, I only had you for a semester or two,
Uh-huh.
but there was, there is a connection that you and I felt with each other
Mhm.
that goes beyond words. And I know I'm not the only student. I know I'm not the only person in your life that can say that. There is a bond that we all share with you. And I think I know what it is, but I was wondering if you could describe it.
Mhm.
And because those of us who know you, those of us who have grown to love you, we all feel this with
Mhm.
you very deeply.
Mhm.
Um, and I was wondering if you could talk about that.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think I discovered very quickly into my teaching ministry that my maybe my first couple years of teaching, I came into it and I was the one to give formal lectures and so forth. But and so I started at European Nazarene College, and so the students were pretty disciplined in their learning and studies, and so I was fresh out of grad school. Actually, the ink was still dripping wet off my dissertation, and so I was stay up till about 4:30 at almost every night preparing lectures. I mean, and so I was getting very little sleep, and but I thought that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to
Mm.
prepare these lectures, and it was about to kill me. And of course, I was about to kill them too, with all the work I was requiring. But then just something clicked in me as I was listening to them, and is that I'm not really here to be the sage on the stage.
Mm.
I'm just simply here to enter into a conversation, to let the Spirit open up space for us all to listen to each other and to learn. And I began to hear from them in their questions how better to uh, teach them how to think critically, to find their own voice in the process of reading these books and thinking about these ideas, and until they could find their own voice and their own critical ways of thinking. But it took a while. But I think once I realized that uh, you guys in the classroom were a means of grace to me. I mean, you were
Mm.
God's gift to me, to give to me what I needed in each class, in each semester, what I needed in that conversation. And it just kept expanding and expanding. I kept getting changed. And so over the years, I mean, I felt like I was being taught more than I was teaching my students,
Mm.
because I was learning to just listen, and then I knew how to use what it is I've learned along the way. And so that's why sort of my take was my pedagogy is to simply uh, see each and every one of you as a gift of God's grace,
Mm.
by which I can learn something of what the voice of God is trying to say in you, and help you say it, and help you think it, and help you embody it in the world. And so uh, I think students quickly realized in me that I was not um, uh, the best ambassador representative for the institution.
Mhm. Yeah.
Whenever the institution can faithfully embody what it is trying to participate in, then I'm all for it and I'm all willing to help it. But the institution is not Christ's living, breathing body. I mean, the institution is simply our human rendering of how we think we might order our lives together around Christ or around God, etc. But more often than not, there are those once they uh, get put in those offices of administration, then they begin to forget that very principle that all this ordered life together is meant to be is simply
Mm.
faithful rendering that's as fluid and as changing as life itself. And but it doesn't take long. Once the institution is formed, then it's there to be preserved and protected. And so very early on, then I saw that you guys were the freshest faces from the future. I mean,
Mm,
if in the beginning when we were created, our end was how we were made. In other words, we were made for God's promise of new creation. And so we were made to even have a part in that co-creating of new creation with the
yeah.
and so if the principle holds that in our beginning was our end, so that when we reach our end, which we will really begin. And
Mm,
so, so my students were always younger than me. So I always figured, okay, these are the freshest faces from the future.
mm,
So they are seeing something that I've not yet seen, but if I'll just listen and pay attention to what's coming. So I began to see a lot of things. I began to see through your questions, your concerns, your lament, uh, but also your disillusion. Your
yeah.
disillusion was that from whence you have come, the future, and what you're now seeing in the world and in these institutions that many of you are going to go back out and to minister in. uh, it was not what you were seeing was not as hopeful from what you from where you'd come. And so that was always so the whole eschatological hope, the whole sense of the promise keeper that had invited us into the mission, the practice of new creation.
Mm,
That got its hooks in me very early in my thinking, and it shaped my pedagogy as well. And so you don't hold on to anything. You just simply receive it for what it is in the moment, and uh, and realize that it's useful for what it is in the time, but new structures, new patterns of thinking, of living together keeps changing. But institutions don't like eschatology. They don't like
yeah.
new creation. They don't like talk of future. They like permanence and
Hmm.
once it's put in your hands so that you can hold on to it, you can
Yeah.
control it and even weaponize it.
Well, you also were going against institution by listening.
Hmm. Yeah,
And because you listen,
yeah.
I think that's why we feel so drawn to you.
Well,
And we feel safe with you. We feel loved by you. And um, even in the middle of all of my questions and my leaving the Nazarene church, and that I still felt
mm,
your grace. I still felt your presence.
mm,
And it's and I think I can speak for all of us who know you. It is it is something that is you,
mm, mm.
something that is within you, and you allow that to come out.
Yeah,
And you even give that same grace to the institution,
I've tried.
not without tripping and stumbling along the way, but Steve, it's who you are.
Yeah, it
You
is.
can't help it.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's a wonderful gift that you not only give to us, but you even give that to yourself.
yeah, yeah,
And that needs to be mentioned. That I want that to be honored.
yeah,
I hope that whomever is listening, even if they don't know you, can feel that.
yeah. Well, thanks, Chad. I mean, it probably should be said. I mean, I don't need to go into all of it, but I have a pretty interesting background, and
Mhm.
I'm the oldest of five.
Okay.
My father was a math genius. He was an industrial engineer. He committed suicide when I was 3 years
Yeah.
old,
Yep.
and I'm the one who found him hanging in the bathroom. I cannot remember any of that, thankfully, but I do remember standing on the front porch when the ambulance came, just hearing God speak to me, hearing the
Mm.
Spirit speak to me. I am your father, and I will take care of you.
Wow.
And so I can remember that as clearly as I'm talking to you. And so I could probably only count on one hand the few times I've been so enveloped by the Spirit of God that I knew it. And that was one of those times.
Yeah.
So, but what happened shortly thereafter, my grandparents on my mother's side were Nazarene pastors during the Great Depression.
Mm.
My grandfather, I would travel with him as a young lad, uh, you know, when he would go speak and preach in some of these churches when he was supply pastoring. And I would sit on the front row and always say, "Amen, amen." But he was bivocational. They were poor as dirt, and he would go every morning to the, I don't even know what they would call it, a work site where he would hire a dozen immigrant workers every day. But he taught me a really powerful lesson at a really young age. He said, all these men are made in God's image.
Yeah.
And he said, I want you to get in the habit when you see people, every time you see someone that you meet, look them in the face and expect to see the face of God.
Mm.
And then he said, but as you're traveling, as you're driving, as you're walking, make sure you always wave at them and look into
Mm.
their face. Don't ever ignore anyone you meet. So that got its hooks in me really early. My grandmother had a deeper sort of understanding of that. She's where I got my sort of mystical DNA. She taught me at a very early age, always look for God everywhere. There
Yeah.
is no place anywhere where God is not present. Pay attention, listen, pay attention. And then she would say, and then don't be afraid to say what you just heard or what you saw.
Mm.
Ask the questions, speak it. So I remember after my dad had died, I was still young, and I would run through the house thinking I just heard my father. And I would run into my grandmother's, the kitchen or wherever, and say, I just heard my dad calling my name. Said, let's talk about it. So she taught me at a very early age to talk about what I was thinking, what I was concerned about, and and don't be afraid to ask questions, even the questions nobody wants you to ask. But whenever you encounter this sense of God's presence, you've got to talk about it. You've got to tell
Mm.
it. You've got to
Yeah.
speak it. And so that shaped me very early. And so
Yeah.
that sort of mysticism has always been in me. Actually, one of your colleagues, I don't know if you remembered him, but he was a student at ENC as well, and he would say, Dr. McCormick, you're just a closet mystic.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that. Yep. Yep.
But but anyway, so that business of expecting to see God everywhere, but also talk about it. And
Hmm.
so you could see how those began to come together, and
Yeah.
that became a pedagogy for me. And because some of the professors I had when I was an undergraduate, all they would do is read from a book in the class as a lecture. And I
Mm.
mean, here I am reading it with them and thinking, this is not teaching. I mean, or they would just simply expect me to remember a certain set of data sets. And I thought, this is not learning, and this is not being renewed with the mind of Christ. And so I took note very early because I knew by the time I was a sophomore in college, I wanted to teach. I just burned in my bones to do it. And so I just set my mind like flint, and that's what I would set off to do. So those are some of the personal. If biography is our theology, as
Mhm.
James McClendon would say in his book, then all of us have narratives, stories to tell that shape the way we think and why we think the way we do. And that's just a small little piece for
Yeah.
for my own pedagogy and and I would say it was probably inevitable
Mm.
uh, over time that the way I am, the way I see, the way I feel, the way I love, it was probably inevitable that
Yeah.
the tradition I was teaching in and had been ordained in would eventually kick me out.
Okay. We'll
But
get to there in a minute. But yeah.
so
Yeah.
what can I say?
Exactly. Everything you're describing though, of how you were shaped by your father's death, how you were shaped by your grandfather and by your grandmother, seeing God in everything. To me, that is pneuma in action.
Mhm.
That is the literal breath of God breathing in and out of us, moving in and out of us, and doing what God does.
Yep, yep,
And we are allowing that to happen. And in those moments, we're saying, I'm willing to be the vessel.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And so this, I love this word, as you know. I loved it, when you first said it. And it has, and as you also know, in the last couple years, especially, it has literally transformed my life.
Mhm.
And what I want to ask you, and I hate, want to get away from questions as much as possible. I just want this to be a conversation, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you can't have a conversation too without questions. But when you first encountered Numa, what stirred inside you?
Yeah, I would say when I was that little story I told you when I was 3 years old on the front porch, that was certainly a stirring of pneuma. I just didn't know it in that
Right.
way. I didn't even have the vocabulary to think in that way. But let's fast forward to when I was 14 years old.
Okay.
And it was the first time from the religious language you and I grew up in and
Hmm.
kind of tradition we grew up in that I came to know the saving, redeeming presence of God. I was 14 years old. It was Sister Estelle Crutcher who was preaching a revival at Lubbock First Church.
Mm.
And I had been given the opportunity to go spend the summer there. This is where my mother was from, my grandparents lived, and so forth. And so I got to spend the summer there at Lubbock First Church with the youth and listening to them talk about their relation to God and so forth. I just burned within wanting what they seemed to be talking about. And I don't even remember what Sister Estelle Crutcher preached on, but I know I totally surrendered my life that evening, and I was so enveloped in the loving presence of God.
Mm.
Uh, and that experience right there is enough to last me forever.
Yeah.
So I went home that night. We were staying in a rented apartment complex. And so everybody, went to bed. And I walked out of that apartment and walked all around the corridor of the apartment all night long, to
Mm.
the hours of the morning, just enraptured in God's presence. I mean,
Wow.
it was a nonstop. I I mean, I was being bathed in the energy of love in a way that I had never known before. And it permanently regenerated in me new creation, but it made me, it hardwired my brain. It was, that was my early baptism, basically in the love of God. And then that set me on a trajectory that shortly thereafter I came home back to Dallas. with the family and my mother's husband, our stepdad. She remarried three other times after that, but that was her second marriage, and he was an alcoholic. And he one evening he was got his gun out and he was ready to shoot us and kill us while he was drunk. And so I wrestled him to the ground, took his gun, and from that moment on, I knew that I needed to leave. I mean, but it was, I would not have had the courage of love. I would not have had even enough wisdom to know what to do had that experience not shaped me. And
Yeah.
so
Wow.
I left home at the age of 14
Mm.
and found a boarding home across the street from the high school and finished my junior year. Then my senior year, I moved back to Lubbock, Texas, found a garage apartment. And, basically, it was a garage with a dirt floor, and I got to have access to her house for kitchen, bathroom privileges and stuff. I paid $35 a month for that.
Wow.
And worked my way, finished high school, and then went to college after that. But all of that, it was that moment of that evening where I knew I had been touched by Pneuma, by the Spirit,
Mm. Mm.
in a way that I had never known before. Um, and I would say I've had other moments where I've sensed just the warm presence of God, but nothing as dramatic and sustaining as that. That marked me forever.
Yeah.
And it's it's so that's who I am. And so that's why my sort of uh, starting point for everybody is that voice is in you, that abiding sense of God's love, which is God's breath, is is,
Yeah.
is in everything, uh,
Yes.
everything of creation. There's no such thing as just material. All matter is also energy, and that energy is, I call it the love of God,
Yeah.
and it fills everything, it animates everything, it moves everything. And so my job as a teacher was always to help you see and hear that voice, and
Yeah.
have your own conversation, and then
Yeah.
put it back out into the world, and
Yeah.
but also know you will become a dangerous person then, because you are to quote Lisa Isherwood, you are queering the scriptures.
Mm.
You're speaking with a queer voice, a strange voice, a never heard before voice,
Yeah.
and but that's what Pentecost was, a cacophony of voices that had already heard
Yes.
the inbreaking of the future of God, of new creation. And anytime any of us gives witness to that, it's going to be strange. It's going to be queer.
Yeah.
And yet what everybody seems to do is they become like zombies. They begin to speak in the same words they've already heard, tell the same stories they've heard, and try to make theirs fit that. And
Yeah.
that's just that is sad to God. I mean,
Yes.
God waits and yearns to hear our fresh new voices. And God waits to be surprised by what we might have to say that God has never heard before.
Mm.
And so uh, so I would say I have been one of the most blessed people in that I got to do what I absolutely love to do for almost 40 years. Um, and if that, and that's what I would hope for everybody is to find whatever it is that is something you love, then you can work at what you love and love what you work. And that's, but I realize, life is not always that way, and it's not always possible, but at the same time, uh, all of us has an original, unique, unrepeatable voice. We
Yeah.
have something to say that the whole world needs to hear, and
Yes.
God needs to hear it. And
That's the reason for this platform.
yeah.
This is not my show.
Mhm.
This is everyone's show
Yeah.
because everyone has a voice.
Yeah.
Everyone is part of the conversation.
Mhm.
And so thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Um, you've kind of been saying this, but I'm going to ask the question anyway, and that's going to lead into the thing that you and I feel really guided to talk about. But Steve, what does the breath of God mean to you today?
There's a line in Charles Wesley that I quote all the time. The Spirit will not let me miss Providence's way.
Oh yeah.
And so whenever I go through certain sort of pivotal transitioning moments or movements in my life, somehow that always comes back to me.
Hmm.
And so I'm about a month out from my defrocking.
Yeah, but
So
take us there. We're going there. Take us.
so
Yeah.
I'm reminded that in many ways I was prescient enough to see 30 years ago this outcome.
Hmm.
I remember walking into the dean's office, Maxine Walker, who was our dean at ENC at the time, and that was, that was in the early 90s. And
That
I
was
said,
just before me joining ENC.
okay, okay. Was she there when you were there?
The name doesn't sound familiar, so I don't think so. I was there between 95 and 98.
Okay. And
So you
I,
saw this even before my generation came on board.
okay, so I said to her, I said, what do you do when you know you've outgrown your tradition?
Hmm.
And she looked at me before the Me Too movement, Me Too movement, and
Yeah.
me too. Now, neither one of us were trying to create trouble or push against the tradition. We were just simply my my task as a theologian of the church's faith, was always to teach the church how to be the church Catholic.
Yeah.
Uh, if we think for a moment, we have a certain set of gifts that we've been given that we have and no one else in the ecclesial marketplace has, and we're now selling them to enlarge our brand, then we fail to understand what it means to be the body of Christ. And um, and so I just say all that when you ask, what does this mean for what is the spirit, what is the breath, what does pneuma mean to me today at this moment in time, is that uh, I am as convicted, assured, convinced today as I was 30 years ago that uh, the Spirit still holds me, still loves me, still guides me, is leading me into new paths, new ways, and when you know that, that's the way uh, infinite vulnerable love pours into flesh and pushes out fear and
Yeah.
pushes it out and makes more space. So
Yeah.
I feel like I have more space, more creative space than I've ever known since all my working years as a professor. And what I mean by that is I I've been retired now 3 years, and I was not expecting just sheer joy uh,
Hmm.
to overwhelm me with untethered freedom
Wow.
from the institution. And what I observe when there's real freedom in the spirit, then there is an imagination like you've never known before. It takes imagination to be faithful. because the moment you start believing in something that's already done, already finished, and you cannot see what new is over the horizon, then you latch on to that past way of thinking and believing, and you stop growing, you
Yeah.
stop living, and you die. And so, since I've retired, I have been processing a handful of categories of faith and just throwing them back into the compost and
Mm,
letting them remetastasize into something new. And so there's been a number of ways I've been rethinking this that I probably never would have said in the classroom as
sure.
boldly as I would say it today.
You were bold in the classroom even then too. So
Uh, part of what I was always, I never wanted to. I would always say, I'm trying to help you learn how to critique as
yes.
in order to correct.
Yes.
Because what we've been entrusted with is something much bigger than even what we now have.
Absolutely.
So if we're to be the agents of that sort of mission and transformation, then as Brian Farmer would often say, the greatest task of the church is to know when to uh, cast aside pearls of truth for new pearls of truth,
Mm,
or when to just hold on to them.
yeah.
And so with this kind of creative imagination, I've really and I wrote about this in my this recent book that's coming out. I made the argument for myself in my faith development is that I used to always teach quite critically that we really need to always start from the perspective of Genesis 1. Uh,
Mm,
why God creates us, the goodness of creation, not Genesis 3, what happened to us, the fall of creation. And
yeah.
so, but what institutional Christianity did once it just sort of formalized its faith in a creed and a dogma, it predicated everything not on the original goodness of creation, but the original fall and sinfulness of everyone made in God's image, born into this world. And
Mm,
as a result of the doctrine of original sin, coupled with this damnable doctrine called hell and eternal punishment,
yeah.
the institution weaponized a dogma in such a way to say um, we have bifurcated the way the Lord taught us to pray, thy kingdom
Yeah.
come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. All heaven is God's space. And so
Mhm.
where is once again, from my mystical background, where on earth is God's space not there? So heaven is always on earth. They're never disconnected. Heaven is not a place we go to after we die, but we're already in God's presence. We're already in the oikodomi, the household of God on earth as in heaven. But the church began to say with these two doctrines, the doctrine of original sinfulness, original sin, and the doctrine of hell and eternal punishment, that if you believe as we tell you to believe, then because we hold in our hands, and we can withhold it from you. We can withhold the body of Christ from you, or we can give it to you. They took Jesus literally rather than rhetorically when he said,
Yeah.
you have power to forgive, you have power not to forgive. Basically, what he was saying, have you not been watching what I've been doing? Have you not seen how I've been Lord to the whole creation? That's the kind of power I'm giving you. But if you order your lives in such a way that you deny it to what I'm giving freely to everybody, then um, shame on you.
Yeah.
So I began to say that the doctrine of original sin and the doctrine of hell and eternal punishment, those are two categories that need to be thrown into the compost. Uh,
Hmm.
yes, there is hell. There's hell on earth. It's hell of our own making. I mean,
Yes.
and we and it's because we fail to see at the most basic level that the love of God breathes in you, it pulses in you, it lives in you. It
Yes.
it needs to be heard. It needs to be lived out. And so
And
uh
anytime we give voice to that, we are stepping outside of doctrine.
yeah,
We are stepping outside of canonical scripture. This conversation in itself is outside of doctrine. And what we have happening in our churches, but not just in our churches, but in religion as a whole, is people are not even allowed to talk about what is sacred.
right, right. Yeah,
And people are not allowed to talk about what not only what they are experiencing in their spiritual journey, but also what's happening in their own lives. Almost
right.
said little, but I didn't mean that. But
Yeah, yeah.
we're not able to talk about, hey, I feel different. I'm
Yeah,
not connecting with what you're saying that will send me to hell.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it was even the same experience I was having when I was growing up in the church is that you're talking about hell and damnation, but that's not the God that I'm experiencing when I'm at home in the quiet.
Right.
It's not the God I'm experiencing when you and I are exchanging love.
Yeah, yeah,
And so people are leaving.
yeah, yeah,
People are fed up. They're angry. They're hurt.
yeah,
They're hurt.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And we because we were raised by an institution that gave us the illusion of love.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And by an institution or institutions that are saying to us, well, if you do it this way, then it's love. Well, that's not what Jesus said.
Right.
That's not what the Buddha said. That's not what Muhammad said or Siddhartha said.
Yeah, yeah,
They're pointing us back to who we are supposed to be, who we are, who and what we are,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
especially in the eyes of Jesus, especially in the eyes of the Pneuma. And I say Jesus here because that's the circle we're in at the moment. If there was someone else, I would
yeah,
not say it. And so I want to just do that clarification to the listeners because I have
yeah.
a mixed audience. But what is happening, Steve? What and this is where you can share your story because you have been defrocked because of love. I will.
Mm,
I'm going to say it like that. You've been defrocked because of love
mm.
and compassion and for being Jesus to people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's right. It's a hard thing. Love has become a term that needs to be so embodied and lived out now because it's just been sentimentalized and we fail romanticized. We fail to really grasp what is going on there. Um, I've come to this part of this book that I just finished. I wrote it while I was going through my excommunication,
Mhm.
uh, because part of what our denomination, uh,
Yeah.
which is still, I said in my post letter, I said it's still in its infancy because it's just now begun its second century. Uh,
Mm.
but it's not yet understood what it means to be the Church Catholic,
Yeah.
the Church Universal, and it struggles to navigate with things like faith and doctrine and
Mhm.
codes of conduct, etc. Um, and part of what has precipitated that failure to understand it is there's just a swelling tide of dissent over the issue of the sexual equality and identity of the LGBT community and the advocacy for their full inclusion in the life and ministry of the church. And so would see, the last decade or so, I was at the seminary where I taught. I would see on the faces of students who were gay, listening
Mm,
to others try to sort of articulate a very rigid church doctrinal position, even though we never did, we still don't have a doctrine on that.
yeah.
What happened is a few years ago, the BGS, the Board of General Superintendents, created a new ruling where they said all codes of conduct, articles of faith, doctrines of the church, policies, etc., everything is contained in the manual has equal weighted authority of the church,
Mm, that's dangerous.
and very dangerous. And they proposed it for a new ruling at the General Assembly,
Mm,
and it failed. It failed
wow.
miserably. And yet the district superintendents continue to use that ruling
Mm,
as a sort of unilateral use of authority. And I called them out on it. And I just said, this is wrong. Anytime you take away the faith of the people, I mean, you cannot be their faith. You cannot tell them how to believe. That's not what faith is. And so that's part of what I argue in this book. All faith is the grammar of the energy of love that's been poured into us. And so all doctrine is meant to do is give us some kind of language by which we talk about that.
Yes.
And
Sure.
that's really all I'm trying to push the reset button on to get us back to that, because I really do believe what is good and right about Christ's living, breathing body, the
Yeah.
church,
Yeah.
is koinonia, is
Hmm.
union.
Yeah.
Maybe the better term these days is friendship.
Mm,
Friendship with God and with one another.
sure.
Nothing to me is the better signpost of God's pneuma, of God's love, than with the gift of friends. I mean,
Yes.
hey, that's really all the church should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is a movement of hospitality
Yes.
to the world. And so that's why, if you want to talk about your broader community on your Pneuma project, I really like the language Richard Rohr used in his book, The Universal Christ,
Yes.
because he makes the argument. He said most people think that Christ is just Jesus's last name. That's not it at all. I mean, because
Yes.
Christ simply means the anointed. So Jesus became the Christ, the anointed. And so then he goes on to say, I mean, the universal Christ is just the universal love of God, because Christ is just another name for anything and
Yeah.
everything. And so, I mean, so wherever there is love and friendship, pay attention. There is God
Yes.
in our midst and so forth. So back to the reason I got kicked out finally, this is about a month ago now that it's official,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
is because over time I was seeing more and more of my students struggling with this. Students, uh, gay and straight,
Hmm.
struggling with this because most of your generation and even younger, Chad,
Yeah.
I had a few Gen Zers, but mostly millennials, but in the last decade. But they're so disillusioned by
Yes.
this, because why would the church be a place of determining who gets in and who is kept out?
Exactly.
My rhetoric became, um, you do not believe what the church tells you to believe in order to belong. You already and you always belong. You've always
Hmm.
belonged.
Yes.
Nothing to do. Even Paul tries to capture this in Romans chapter 5. While we were all still yet sinners,
Hmm.
God loved us in Christ through the power of the Spirit. So our faith, our belief has absolutely nothing to do with pneuma, with spirit, with breath, with love. God's steadfast love is so unchangeably faithful, and it's unconditional. There's no
Yeah.
conditions, no strings to it. There's no
Yeah.
hint of meritocracy whatsoever. And yet we've now turned this belief system of what we believe is right and wrong, and we believe now we're on the right and righteous side of God, and so we are justified to tell who can get in and who must stay out.
Yes. And that's the reason for this conversation. The
Yeah,
the finger pointing,
yeah,
the damnation,
yeah,
the
yeah,
condemnation has got to stop. And we have to embrace our differences, love our differences,
yeah,
and find commonality in them. A word I've heard you use a couple times now to describe what you're talking about is existential terrorism.
yeah, yeah,
We the religious organizations are tearing away our essence of what it means not only to be human,
yeah,
but what it means to be divine.
yeah, yeah. Well, one of some of the rhetoric I've been playing with, and I used it, and I was asked, I was coerced, I was coerced to do it. I did an interview for the piece that was written by the Baptist Global News.
Yes. Yeah.
Tom Ward asked me to do it, and I said, "Okay, I'll do it." If it simply means that it sets the record straight, or it speaks the truth, brings it to light, because
Yes.
they love to hide in the dark and in the shadows, and so
Yes.
put it out there. And so and so I had a colleague from another institution I once taught at. He said, "You are now the most persona non grata in this church." And what he was getting at is that I called out the episcopacy of the tradition, and I've been calling it a totalitarian episcopacy.
Mm.
And totalitarianism is just fascism. And
Yeah.
if you think about the language of fascism, a fascist dictator wants to see their face in your face.
Yeah.
You want to hear their words in your words. Um, and so they want, this is why it's often called totalitarian, they want total compliance.
Yeah.
Total compliance. So I've been really thinking about that of late. The reason the church cannot take your faith from you and give you their faith is because the essence of that faith is the love of God. And so the love of God that breathes in you, pulses in you, moves out of you, animates you, is the voice that everyone needs to hear because it's unique, original, and unrepeatable. And so when
Yes.
an institution says this is what you must believe in order to belong, they have they have they have cast aside the good news that's for all creation and made it only for those who will comply.
Hmm.
So some of our leadership one of our district superintendents here used to say to the district advisory board, you must ask these questions. And mostly it was about the LGBTQI issues. And if they don't totally comply, but then just tell them to go home because
Wow.
he said we have to, his language was we have to close the loop. So in other words, we have to guard who is in and who is out. And so I began to think about this from the place of love. If it truly takes the voice and the face of someone other than my own to tell me that I am beloved, then who will be left to tell these closed, gated communities that they are beloved?
Mm.
All they now hear is one sound, one voice. The only face they see is the face of those who tell them they must look into their face and see. And I think that's to me is the most disturbing thing about this. And so and so yeah, I mean, I just heard the other day that I knew that the one of the churches in Oklahoma had disaffiliated, but I wasn't aware that the pastor had been brought up on charges probably 10, 15 years ago for the simple reason that he dedicated two children of lesbian parents.
Wow.
They just dedicated their children. I mean, and they brought him up on charges and convicted him, but in the end had no discipline to offer. So they left him alone. So it was kind of like a warning. And so 15 years later, or however many years later, they decided to disaffiliate. And they made the argument, we're not disaffiliating simply over LGBTQIA plus issues. We're disaffiliating because we cannot follow Christ. We
Yeah.
cannot love like God calls us to in Christ. We cannot make friends with anyone we want to make friends with. And and I think that's the right reason to pull out. That's the right reason to leave. And so as sad as it's been to think about the tradition that I served in as an ordained elder for over 40 years and taught in four different institutions of that denomination. Um, I I don't recognize the Christ that I follow, that I know
Yes.
uh, in this way. Now, don't get me wrong, I know plenty of people who I believe inside this tradition that are full of the love of God and trying to find their way
Yes.
as they can. I
Absolutely.
truly believe that.
Yeah.
But but I but I think
And we're still friends with a lot of them,
yeah,
you and
absolutely.
I.
And so
Some of the same ones too.
our my dean back way back in ENC when she asked me, well, when I told her I had felt then I had outgrown the tradition, both intellectually, theologically, spiritually, blah, blah, blah. And she said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to continue to be as faithful to the gospel that I know to be.
Sure.
I'm, I'm going to teach that. I'm going to explicate that. And if somewhere along the way I get booted, then I'll just consider that to be the divine release.
Mm.
So Pneuma has released me.
Numa has released exactly. I also wanted to add that it is no one's business, especially religion's business, what we do at home between the sheets.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Done.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I would even go a step further. It's probably not even religion's business to really know what I'm experiencing on my own journey.
yeah, yeah,
I don't have to report to them.
yeah, yeah,
I don't have to seek their permission or validation for my experience.
yeah,
If it is truth, Pneuma, God will let me know. That is innate in all of us.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah,
remember that from
yeah,
your teachings as well.
yeah,
We will be moved
yeah, yeah.
to where we need to be, what we need to do, and what we need to say.
God will bring the right people
Yes,
to affirm that in you and
absolutely.
to and we all need uh uh help along the way, of course. And that's why we need to stay tethered to one another.
Yes.
But at the same time, uh, the last thing we need is an institution whose only objective is to keep that institution, that machinery working.
Yeah.
It is, in the end of the day, it is not about you and me. It's that machinery. And
Yeah.
I think everybody knows that, but then you quickly forget it once you get put into those offices to control the levers of power, and then it's all over with. So
Yes.
But so yeah, that's kind of where I am at this juncture.
Yeah.
But I have watched so many people, mostly my students, but others get hurt by this sort of weaponizing of Scripture
Mm.
to control what we must believe and what we don't believe. Even someone said, as a side to me the other day, well, I guess you're just going to have to work out your salvation in fear and trembling. And it was a backhanded slap.
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, but I guess I would say, and I've spoken to many about this, much of what's happened in evangelicalism is an absolute failure to understand the nature of Scripture.
Yes.
The canon of Scripture is not a closed book.
Mm.
God no longer has anything to say to us.
Yes.
And almost as if the Spirit is no longer even needed because we have a closed book. And I would just want to go a step farther and say everything in Scripture, everything is certainly a conversation with the divine.
Yeah.
It is also our own projection
Hmm.
back onto the divine.
Sure.
And because the divine is love, the love of God, the love of the Spirit is not going to coerce us or force us into anything. And
Mm.
so sometimes God just lets us say these things and write these crazy things, waiting for the next day until we're ready to hear. And so those I call them those seven little clobber texts that the
Okay.
church uses to beat each other up with over, you know, homosexuality or human sexuality. Uh, if they only knew what we know today, if they knew what we know today just about human sexuality from a biological, neurological perspective, and even in the evolutionary process, uh, then we would stop using those as absolute texts,
Mm.
universal norms for all times.
Yes.
And so I used to make this argument in my ethics class uh, for 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 our for our church tradition is that uh, the I agreed to a participation in a grant at the seminary with a neuroscience grant, and if we would agree to read the materials and bone up on neuroscience and use it in at least one of our classes, the seminary would get grant money, and we would each get a piece of that grant money. And so I was one of five, I think, that agreed to it, and so I used it in my ethics class.
Mm.
Well, one of the things I learned in this is that uh, male and female as categories are nothing but social constructs that we've made to try to understand difference between someone who looks like us and someone who doesn't look like us. But the mapping of the genome, they discovered 64 different variations
Yes.
on the spectrum of what we might call male, female as a construct. 64 different variations, and it's still being mapped out. I mean, it's been mapped out, but that's on a spectrum, and not one of
Mm.
us is on the same place. Okay, so in other words, that makes the point, the neuroscience makes the point that this business of male and female is tricky, tricky business. And
Yes.
are able to nail that down. And even someone wants to say to be made in God's image, you're made as male or female. That misses the point entirely. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
that our gender, which is a category of our making, is not the same as what it means to be made in God's image. I
Mhm.
really like what John Wesley says. What does it mean to be human? To be capable of God.
Mm.
Capacity for God is what it means to be human. And what gives us that capacity? The breath. the
Yes.
Ruach, the Spirit, the love of God. It's constant. It
Yes.
never leaves us. And so that is our capacity for God. All right, now back to the neuroscience. So what I also learned is 1.9% of the world's population, 1.9% is born as non-binary,
Yes.
not having the chromosome or to be one way or the other. And most of those non-binaries are born without genitalia.
Mm.
So that's why parents struggle. What do we do at birth? I mean, what gender do we assign, and so forth. And so I made the point to our tradition is that 1.9% is more than there are of us around the world.
Wow.
Now, if that doesn't put a pin in this for you, so that you have to say, well, I guess we can no longer read those seven clobber texts as absolute universal norms anymore. Because if there's more people than there are of like us in this little tribe, this cult of ours, then that certainly could not be seen as a once time for all absolute fixed norm in the same way in which the Shema is universal for everyone. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and your neighbors as yourself. I mean,
Right.
that's permanent, that's fixed. But anyway, so when I tell them 1.9 is more than there are 2.7 million of us around the world, uh, they go crazy. Their heads.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
anyway,
Steve, we are beyond the hour, but it is okay because this is kind of if I can use the term, this is kind of the flagship episode. Even though it's not the first episode, this is why I'm here. This is why we are here. This is why I have created this platform. And so it's okay. We've gone over an hour. This needed
I've lost track of the time.
to, as you do as a professor. That's okay. So, but I want before we end, if you could, what is your biggest struggle? Where does Steve struggle on a daily basis?
Yeah. Uh, I think the biggest struggle is is to find ways to help those I meet have hope.
Mm,
Hope is not wishful thinking. Hope is not positive thinking. Hope is certainly not, I've never loved that phrase, optimism of grace.
yeah, yeah.
Hope is the abiding presence of God. Hope is the breathing presence of the Spirit. And so the Spirit is always coming to us from the future, not from the past, but from the future.
Mm,
And so that inbreaking of the Spirit, the breath that comes to us from the Spirit comes from the future. And it's a promise. Uh, Behold, I am making all things new.
beautiful. Yes.
Okay, but I have my moments.
Mm,
And
yes.
I am probably as concerned as I've ever been concerned in all my years of living. I'm 72 years old.
Mm,
I am watching the world being turned upside down, inside out, in ways I've never seen in my
mm,
lifetime. It certainly has happened, but I'm watching in this country of ours, I'm watching totalitarianism, fascism take over to
mm,
control what we think, uh, to control even a platform like this. Uh,
yeah.
The media is already under siege. I mean, most of the legacy media has already caved. They're paying out whatever fines they need to pay out just to live to see another day. I read Harvard the other day is working out a settlement now with the administration. So not only do they have to pay the money, but they're going to give full access to all the employment records so they can to see who's employed. Uh, I mean, the thing that just breaks my heart, my wife's heart, my wife's become quite the political activist in our retirement years, but is to see the ways in which ICE is targeting people, profiling people, putting them in cages that we wouldn't even treat animals this way, but they're putting them in cages, taking away their dignity, they're
Hmm.
torturing them, they're coming after them in mass. But not only that, most people, if they're not because they're not paying attention, this is blatant white nationalism. This is America's original sin, failing to overcome its racism and thinking that, a lot of people have never even in church history. I don't even know if I taught this when I was teaching, when you had my church history class, but I mean, of course, we've known about the Crusades and so forth,
Yes.
but but I never taught at the time the doctrine of the Great Discovery,
Mm.
which is what was going on when Columbus was sent to sail to America and was promised, because we white Christians have been blessed and have been chosen by the Creator, by God. When you go and search and discover land, it's yours for the taking.
Yeah.
If anyone gets in your way, it is your right to either get them out of the way. You have the right to even if you look in the papal bull, I think it's 1413, something like that, in the papal bull. I could be wrong about the exact date, but
Yeah.
you have the right to gut pregnant women with their babies. I mean, if they're getting in the way. So in other words, the justification of murder
Yeah.
in the name of God,
Yeah.
and that is we're watching this happen. I mean, when you've got a Supreme Court that's already uh, um, giving our president everything he wants. So
Hmm.
now I am a student of news, of world news. I am a newsaholic. This is one of the ways in which I am attentive. I pay
Yeah.
attention uh, to where the Spirit is moving us. So I pray for courage, the courage of love, because when we do use our voice, um, at times it can be a voice of sacrifice, and it may cost us our lives. And so, but I think, that's why I say the Spirit will not let us miss Providence's way, but the Spirit is going to cause good trouble. And how else does the Spirit do that except through us?
Well, and to quote you, there is hope.
Yes, there is hope.
Because, and if I can use this old word, there is a remnant within society that you are a part of, I am a part of, that is offering change in a quiet, subtle way.
Mm,
And that voice is being heard, and that voice will continue to expand. And
mm.
it's platforms like this, it's other platforms that are making that voice be heard.
Yep.
And so we're going to come to an end here.
All right.
And in a way, you're the father of
Uh,
this platform in, in an indirect way. And
some call me
I
blessed,
I will
some call me cursed.
that's exactly exactly it. But Steve, I want to bring honor to you, not only for what you've done in my life, the instrument you have been in my life, but the instrument you've been to so many of us. And that above all else, I want that to be heard in this conversation because you have blessed us
Yeah.
in so many ways. So many ways you've blessed us. And 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 in a way and I think you've said it too, the defrocking is a blessing.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
released you
Yeah.
of that tether
Yeah. Yeah.
for you to
Yeah.
truly be you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we see you.
Yeah.
We hear you, we honor you, and we love you.
Well, thanks, Chad. And that blessing
It is.
it is symbiotic. It goes both ways, and
It has to.
yeah, it just does. What what is sent out from God always returns back home to God.
Again, that's the pneuma.
Yeah, yeah.
That is the pneuma. And
So our hope is doxological.
yes. So if we could just for a few moments, if we could just be in the pneuma together, be in the breath with our eyes closed, with a moment of silence, moment of stillness, a moment of sacredness. Could we be in this moment together and with the audience?
Yeah, yes, indeed. Let's
And
do it.
I will bring us out with an invocation.
Okay.
Let this breath be the thread that remembers us, not to a name, not to a title, and not even to a role, but to the hush from which all speaking comes. What we have shared was never spoken, yet it now echoes across the field. May all, may all who listen not hear us, but feel themselves. May Pneuma breathe where it will, and may we remember it was always breathing with us. And as we open our eyes, we bring this stillness with us because it is life itself. Steve, thank you again.
Thanks, Chad.
And thank you for everyone else for joining us. And until the next show, we will see you next time.